The winter sun hung low over the Dakota plains, its pale light scattering across miles of untouched snow. The river cut through the wilderness like a vein of frozen silver, its surface whispering beneath the ice. Crows circled above, their cries echoing through the stillness, the sound of a land untamed, where every breath was survival and every shadow hid danger. Near the river's edge, where frost-coated reeds bent under the cold wind, lay a man, broken, bleeding, and half-buried in snow. His name, unknown to the wild that surrounded him, would soon become legend among those who called this land home. He wore torn military leather, a blood-soaked coat marked by old insignias, a relic from a war long forgotten. His face was hidden beneath a crust of frost, lips blue, eyes closed. The horse's prints that once followed his path ended yards away, swallowed by the snowstorm. The only sign of life near him was the faint steam rising from his chest, shallow, dying breaths. In the distance, between the trees, shapes began to appear, quiet, cautious, and painted with the earth itself. They were the Lakora tribe, descendants of the first people to roam these plains. Their steps made no sound, their eyes gleamed like amber in the pale light. Wrapped in buffalo hides and marked with red clay patterns, they moved closer, their spears raised, cautious yet curious. One of them, a young woman with long black hair tied in braids, stopped near the wounded stranger. Her name was Naomi, daughter of Chief Iruka, and her gaze was sharp, not with fear, but with a strange sense of fate. She knelt beside the man, brushing snow from his face, and whispered something in her native tongue. The others murmured among themselves, arguing whether to leave him or bring him home. But Naomi's voice cut through the cold like an arrow. "He's not our enemy," she said softly, "not today." The chief, an old man with eyes that carried both storms and wisdom, gave a nod. They lifted the stranger, carrying him across the frozen plains toward the tribal village, a hidden settlement beyond the pine ridge where smoke curled into the sky. The night deepened as they arrived. The huts, made of wood and animal skin, glowed faintly under the moonlight. Inside one of them, Naomi laid the stranger near the fire. Steam rose from his wounds as they cleaned the blood and wrapped him in fur. His breathing steadied, but his past still haunted his dreams, flickers of gunfire, screams, and a river running red. Naomi stayed by his side, feeding the fire, watching the frost melt from his face. Somewhere, deep inside her, a voice told her that this man's arrival would change everything, for her, for the tribe, and for the wilderness itself. Days passed. The stranger's fever broke like dawn after a long night. He awoke to the sound of a drum, slow, steady, echoing through the wooden walls. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. His body ached, his wounds still tender, but warmth surrounded him, a fire crackling beside him, the smell of smoke and herbs filling the air. He turned his head and saw her, Naomi, sitting near the entrance, grinding roots in a clay bowl. Her eyes lifted, and a soft smile crossed her lips. "You live," she said simply, her English rough but clear. The man struggled to sit up, his voice hoarse. "Where am I?" "In Lakora land," she replied, placing a hand on his shoulder to keep him down. "You were dying near the river. The spirits must have sent you." He exhaled weakly, half laughing. "Spirits, huh? Guess I owe them thanks." For the next few days, Naomi and her people tended to him. They gave him food, roasted venison and bitter tea, and taught him a few words of their tongue. The tribe watched him carefully. Some believed he was cursed, others thought he was chosen. He was different, his skin paler, his clothes strange, his eyes full of battles they could not name. But over time, suspicion softened. He showed respect, bowing his head to elders, helping gather firewood once he regained strength. He smiled at the children who followed him around the camp, fascinated by the outsider who spoke like thunder yet moved like wind. One evening, under a sky painted with burning stars, the stranger sat by the fire with Chief Iruka. "You fight in the white man's war?" the chief asked, his deep voice echoing in the quiet. The stranger nodded slowly. "Long ago. Lost too much to remember why." The chief studied him for a while, then said, "Perhaps the spirits brought you here to learn peace." That night, as the tribe sang ancient songs to the rhythm of the drums, Naomi sat beside him. The firelight painted her face gold. For the first time in years, he felt something he had forgotten, calm. The sounds of the war faded. The cold outside no longer felt cruel. And in that fragile stillness, a seed of love began to grow, silent, unseen, but strong enough to survive even the coldest winter of the Wild West. As weeks turned into months, the man who once came from the world of guns and greed began to shed the weight of his past. His name was Elias, though the tribe called him Wakanta, meaning the one who returned from death. Each day, he learned something new: how to track elk by broken snow, how to read the sky before a storm, how to speak with the earth instead of conquering it. Naomi taught him most of it. They would rise at dawn, walk through the whispering pines, and hunt beneath the silence of falling snow. He listened more than he spoke, and slowly, the forest began to speak back. The tribe accepted him gradually, not through words but through shared work. Elias built traps with the hunters, carried logs for the fire, and repaired huts battered by the wind. When he smiled, the children ran to him. When he sat alone by the river at night, the elders watched quietly, sensing the ghosts he carried. Naomi often joined him, sitting across the flames. She told him stories about the Great Spirit, the rivers that remembered names, and the stars that once were warriors. He listened like a man starving for peace, like each word was a piece of himself returning. One night, the wind was fierce, howling through the trees like lost souls. The fire in the center of the camp burned low, and snow began to fall again. Elias and Naomi sat close inside her hut, the air heavy with smoke and warmth. He traced the patterns painted on the walls, red clay swirls of animals and storms, and asked softly, "You really believe the spirits watch us?" Naomi smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They watch everything, even the lost." He looked at her for a long moment, his voice quiet. "Then maybe they brought me here for you." Her eyes met his, steady, curious, and soft. "Maybe they brought you here for yourself." Outside, the snow thickened, blanketing the camp in silence. Inside, the fire's glow painted their faces in golden shadow. She leaned closer, wrapping a fur around his shoulders. He could feel the rhythm of her breath, slow and warm. For a moment, the world outside, the war, the pain, the loneliness, faded into nothing but the soft sound of her heartbeat. It was then he realized he was no longer a visitor. He belonged, not to the tribe, not to the land, but to her. In the days that followed, his connection with the Lakora grew deeper. He joined their dances, learned their songs, and even helped carve the great wooden totem that guarded the camp. He told stories of the cities beyond the plains, of carriages that moved without horses, of men who built towers of iron. The tribe listened in awe, half in wonder, half in disbelief. But Elias never spoke of his past life in detail. Some memories were better left buried under snow. When spring came, melting the rivers and freeing the earth, the camp erupted with color and song. The hunters painted their bodies and raced through the meadows, the women wove new blankets from wool and grass. Elias stood beside Naomi at the edge of the river, the same river where his life had almost ended. He reached into the cold water and smiled. "You know," he said, "this river, it feels like it remembers me." Naomi looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it does." And in that quiet moment, as the wind rippled across the water, they both felt it. A promise the earth itself seemed to make, that even those who've lost everything can be reborn when they learn to love again. Seasons changed again. The once frozen plains now shimmered under golden sun. The Lakora tribe thrived, their hunts successful, their spirits strong. Much of it, the people whispered, was because of Elias. His skills in strategy and survival had saved the tribe more than once. When wolves attacked the cattle, it was he who led the defense. When drought hit the western valley, it was his plan that brought water through hand-dug trenches. He had earned their respect not through power, but through wisdom and sacrifice. Chief Uruka, however, had grown weak. His cough rattled the nights, and his once strong hands now trembled like leaves. Still, his eyes burned with the same fire, proud, knowing, watchful. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, he called Elias and Naomi into his hut. The air smelled of herbs and smoke, thick with the weight of unspoken things. "You came to us as a ghost," Uruka said slowly, his voice deep but frail. "Now you walk as one of us. The tribe listens when you speak. They follow when you move. But leadership is not given, it is tested." Elias lowered his head. "I never asked for power, Chief." Uruka smiled faintly. "No true leader ever does." That night, he gave Elias a challenge, a sacred test of the Lakora, to travel alone into the mountains and bring back the heart of the great elk, a symbol of strength and spirit. The journey would take him through snow and danger, through lands where even wolves feared to tread. Naomi tried to stop him, but Uruka's word was final. If he returns, he said, he will be ready, not just to lead, but to protect. Elias left before dawn, carrying only a bow, a knife, and a small charm Naomi placed in his hand. For luck, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. And come back to me. The journey tested him like no battle had before. He crossed frozen rivers, climbed cliffs slick with ice, and faced storms that roared like ancient gods. Hunger gnawed at his body, loneliness at his soul. But each night, when the cold became unbearable, he held the charm to his heart and heard her voice in the wind. Come back. After 7 days, he found the great elk, an enormous beast crowned with silver antlers, standing atop a ridge of snow. The creature's breath steamed like fire, its eyes deep and ancient. Elias raised his bow but hesitated. In that stillness, he realized what Uruka truly meant, that strength was not in taking life, but in understanding it. He lowered his weapon and bowed instead. The elk snorted, turned, and vanished into the mist. When Elias returned to camp, he carried no trophy, only the memory of what he'd learned. When the people saw him, unbroken and alive, they cheered. Chief Uruka smiled for the first time in months. You faced the spirit of the mountain, he said. And you returned not with blood, but wisdom. That is the mark of a leader. That night, the drums of celebration echoed through the forest. The stars above seemed closer than ever, like the ancestors themselves were watching. Naomi stood beside Elias, eyes shimmering with tears and pride. And as the firelight danced around them, the old chief placed a hand upon their heads, blessing them both under the sacred moon. The moon hung high above the valley, round and white like a blessing from the heavens. The Lakora gathered beneath it, dressed in their finest hides and feathers, faces painted with the colors of dawn and dusk, red for courage, blue for loyalty, white for love. A great fire burned at the center of the camp, its light dancing on the drums that beat like thunder from the heart of the earth. Tonight was not just a ceremony, it was the weaving of two worlds, two souls, into one. Elias stood at the river's edge in garments the tribe had made for him, a cloak of wolf fur over his shoulders, beads carved with eagle wings around his neck. His hair, once tangled and rough, now fell neatly behind him, tied with a strip of leather. Across the fire stood Naomi, radiant in a dress of white buckskin embroidered with silver thread. Her eyes shone brighter than the flames, and as she walked toward him, the snow under her feet seemed to sparkle like stars fallen from the sky. Chief Uruka, now old and pale, sat near the fire, wrapped in blankets. Though his body weakened by the day, his voice carried clear as the wind. Tonight, he said, we honor not just love, but balance, between sky and earth, between man and spirit. Elias came from the river of death, and Naomi, from the heart of life. Together, they remind us that even in the coldest winters, warmth can still be found. The tribe began to sing, a haunting melody that rose and fell like the rhythm of the mountains. The drums echoed across the plains, reaching even the distant trees. Naomi and Elias faced one another, hands joined, foreheads touching. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. The fire between them flickered higher, as if it, too, understood. When Uruka lifted his staff and brought it down on the earth, the tribe cheered. By the spirits of our ancestors, he said, voice trembling but strong, you are bound as one. Elias smiled, eyes glistening. I once thought I'd lost my home, he whispered to her. Turns out, I just hadn't found it yet. Naomi smiled back through tears. You didn't find it, Elias. You built it. They kissed as snow began to fall, gentle, silent, infinite. The fire roared, and the people danced, circling around them in celebration. It was a night of warmth and wonder, where even the stars seemed to lean closer just to watch. As years passed, Elias and Naomi's love became legend among the Lakora. They led not with fear or command, but with compassion. Under their care, the tribe flourished, stronger, wiser, more united than ever. The children of Lakora grew hearing stories of the man who came from the cold river and rose to lead with a heart warmer than the sun. 2 children were born to them, Kale, the elder son with eyes like storm clouds and a spirit restless as fire, and Lyra, the younger daughter whose laughter could melt even the fiercest winter. Together, they grew beneath the same cotton clouds that once had watched their father struggle. Elias taught them the ways of both worlds, the blade and the book, the prayer and the plan, the art of surviving with strength and love. Naomi, meanwhile, filled their hearts with peace, teaching them the songs of the wind, the dances of rain, and the language of stars. Chief Iruka passed peacefully one summer evening, his last words whispered to Elias, "Lead them not as a warrior, but as a healer." The tribe mourned, but their sorrow turned quickly into gratitude, for his wisdom, his courage, and for leaving behind two souls destined to guide them into a new age. In time, Elias stood once again by the river where his life had begun anew. The air was cool, and the sun glinted on the water's surface like scattered gold. He felt a small hand slip into his, Lyra's, and he smiled. "This is where I was found," he told her softly. She looked up, curious. "By Mama." He nodded. "By fate." A breeze whispered through the reeds, carrying with it the faint sound of a distant drum, as if the spirits were still singing, still watching, still blessing. Elias closed his eyes and breathed deep, feeling the weight of the years, and the peace that came with them. He had once been a man of war, of pain and exile. Now, he was a man of love, of legacy, of belonging. As the sun set over the snowy valley, the tribe gathered for the night fire. Children played near the flames, elders sang stories, and the smoke rose high into the heavens. Elias and Naomi sat side by side, wrapped in a single fur, their fingers intertwined. The stars shimmered above them, familiar and kind. Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Do you ever miss the world you came from?" He thought for a moment, watching the sparks dance into the night sky. "Sometimes," he said, "but it never missed me back." She smiled softly. "Then maybe this one was made just for you." And in that stillness, Elias knew she was right. The drums slowed. The fire cracked. Snow fell gently once more, not as a curse, but as a promise. Years later, when both Elias and Naomi had passed into legend, the Lakora still spoke of them in whispers around the fire. Travelers would come from distant lands, asking about the white-eyed chief and the daughter of the wind. The elders would nod, pointing toward the river, where two intertwined stones stood like lovers frozen in time. They said when the snow melted and the first thawing water flowed past those stones, you could still hear their laughter in the ripples, gentle, eternal. And sometimes, on nights when the moon hung full and bright, the river itself seemed to glow, as if remembering the day love crossed worlds, healed hearts, and taught even the spirits that no winter lasts forever. So, if you ever wander far enough to find that quiet valley of ice and song, listen closely to the wind. You might just hear the echo of their story. A tale of love born from frost, written in fire, and remembered by the river forever.